And welcome back to the Barry Foster Show, originating from the Ridge Floor Studios in the City of Charm, beautiful downtown Avon Park. I'd like to remind you that if you have any thoughts, ideas, or suggestions for our program, just drop us a line at thebarryfostershow@gmail.com and check out our YouTube page at The Barry Foster Show Daily. We'll be putting up new programming on a regular basis. Subscribe to our YouTube page, please, and join our pages at The Barry Foster Show on Facebook and Instagram. That would be very, very helpful if you could do that. So in the studios again with us, we have the handsome and exciting John Larsen. John?
Good morning.
Good to have you back with us, sir.
Yep, back. I'm glad I'm able to function.
And as we walked today, it was interesting that on Tuesday, like clockwork, the gas prices go back up again.
Locally, unbelievable. Every week, last Friday, I topped off my tank at $2.95. And now this morning, most of the stations I passed on the way up here were $3.19.
Yeah, and they jump up immediately, and then they incrementally go back down. We saw this last week where everybody shot up to $3.19, except for the low price stations, which came up to like $3.05. But then over the course of the week, they go back down again.
Yep. So it's been, talking about that, I was just looking at a thing here about oil production since Trump got in. Right now, we're currently, oil production is at 12.4 million barrels per day. And that's an increase of 400,000 barrels per day from a year ago.
Well, we saw even at the day after his election, before he even took office as the president, the oil industry responded very quickly, and we began to see them making preparations for this. But the problem is, as far as I can tell, and we've talked about this for actually decades, it's been decades since they have built a new gas processing plant.
Refinery,
Yeah,
absolutely. And there's the biggest issue, and if you look at it, most of the refining is done down around the Gulf of Mexico. Louisiana, Mississippi, those areas is where most of it's done, and so on. So, I mean, we have to have, and every time they try to say, well, we want to build a new, refinery over here, well, there's so much hue and cry from the locals and the local governments that they end up not doing it. So finding a spot where they could build one and get approval of it would be a big deal.
John, I'm going to ask you to pull your mic up. Just grab it right here. Right there you go.
Okay. All right.
Now you sound like you're in the studios.
It kind of does its own thing, though.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll have to fix that.
It's got a mind of its own.
Oh,
let's
there
put it
you
that way.
Now you sound like you're in the studios. I want to say that since last time John was in, we've gotten some new equipment. I have the John Scaglione Memorial microphone here, and we're moving forward with new equipment and new subscribers, and things are getting better, just like they're getting better under the Trump administration.
Amen.
It just takes a little while for things to happen.
Yeah. Well, like this article went on to say that we're still about the high mark for when Trump was in the last time in 2019 was 13 million barrels per day. So they're only 6/100ths of a million barrels off of what he was doing in 2019. And I'm sure that, the other part to it too is for every electric vehicle that's on the road is another car less that's buying gas. So you've got that. They've got to watch that too, because as more people buy electric vehicles or whatever, and they're still going to sell. I think Elon Musk, I think he's done a great job. I think his vehicles, I think if I were to buy an electric vehicle, I think it would be a Tesla from everything I've seen.
Oh yeah.
It would be a Tesla more than almost anything else. But, that being said, California now is another one of the states. What they want to do is tack on a mileage tax. So for every mile you drive, they're going to tax you. Well, if you're a commuter in California, there's a lot of commuters that drive 50, 60, 100 miles each way to go to work. If you're paying a mileage tax, that no matter what the price is, you got maybe 100, 200 times whatever that rate's going to be, 8 cents a mile or whatever they end up putting it in.
And in the city of New York, they're going to charge you for driving through the downtown area, some exorbitant, like it's thousands of dollars. And I've heard this on the Brian Kilmeade show, talking about what it costs them who work in the downtown area. And I think that there is an effort there to try to move people over to mass transit, whether it's the rapid transit rail system, whether it's the buses, whether it's taxis, whatever it is. They're trying to move you to that system. And I think that's so they can track where you're going. Really.
I was watching a story about that, talking about moving and transit and subways and all. In New York, of course, the governor put the National Guard and the majority number of cops in the subway because of all the crime in the subway.
Yes.
The problem is now the crime above the subways has escalated like unbelievably. I mean, you look at what's happened, robberies, murders, all of that's taken off because they know the cops are underground in the subway, not on the streets where they're committing crime.
And they go where the cops aren't.
That's right.
Of course you would go where the cops aren't.
Yeah, and the other problem, specifically in New York they're grossly undermanned right now. They need a couple thousand officers, but I think they're retiring and quitting as fast as they bring new recruits in.
Well, we saw this several years ago where law enforcement agencies such as ours or in the state of Florida said, look, why don't you come to a place that's going to be more friendly? Mm-hmm. And we saw some guys move here, and at first they were very astonished that people like buy them lunch and say hello and be friendly to them. And they had a bit of a culture shock here where we like the police around here.
Amen. Absolutely. I agree with that. Now, you're right. I think any police in this area normally gets a pretty round of applause, if you will, whenever they, because people realize the job they've got. And still today, you just look at the number of police officers that die in a line of duty, and it's still a big number, and it happens, unfortunately, a lot.
No one ever calls the police because they're having a good time and everything's going well. No. They only call when Uncle Ernie's had too much to drink and he's causing the scene. Whenever they show up, there's going to be a problem somewhere. So they never know. And we've seen this here where we've lost some guys in the line of duty. They never know what to expect. Mm-hmm. And so, but if you have good law enforcement and you have good boundaries like we have here in Central Florida, it makes it a lot easier to live. And one of the issues that we have is, over the weekend I did a great interview with Kaylee Tuck on the Farm Bill, talking about a lot of the things that happened, and it happened with a lot more things than just farming. Like one of the things I was really liked about, we're here in the Ridge Flora Studios on Main Street in Avon Park, and
I thought it was the Sebring Raceway.
Yeah, you're gonna hear some. I have seen so many law enforcement cars driving by while we were here. It's been interesting, and this guy decided he was going to show us how fast he could go.
I guess.
But it's what we call live sound. But I want to thank Kaylee for talking about the fluoride, but the ability to return solar farms back to agricultural use. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to be interested to see how that goes because I'm understanding that sometimes when there are solar panels, there might be chemicals that are deleterious to growing things. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But it may speak well to the idea that solar and wind may not be the wave of the future for powering.
Well, if you look at places where they've installed, like Germany has really committed suicide when it comes to electricity. Mm-hmm. They abandoned all their nuclear plants just about. They did away with everything, refining and so on, and they're trying to exist on wind and solar, and it's not going to work. I mean, you've already seen these countries that they have to shut, there's no electricity because the demand is so high because they've gone green and try to depend on wind and solar. It doesn't work.
Back in the 60s, one of our teachers instructed us a little project to go home with a pencil and piece of paper and write down everything in your house that runs on electricity. And I had 2 columns of everything from blenders to everything that was in the house, TVs that ran on I was astonished. And that was back in the 60s. Now I think you probably could fill a notebook with the things in your house that run on electricity. And so you want electric costs to be as low as possible. Mm-hmm. And to forsake that. And I think nuclear is going to be the wave of the future in producing, because nuclear doesn't freeze the way that wind turbines freeze. Right. And the wind turbines, it costs more to make them in energy than they'll ever produce for us to coming out of the light socket.
I saw a story a while back that talked about they now have these, and I'll call them these mini nuclear reactors. They're not the big structures like we're used to with the big stacks and all that, but they're a smaller version but they can feed a locale with local electricity because it's nuclear. And it's not this big massive installation that they've had in years past. So maybe something like that, I think, could be the wave of the future, and put cheap electricity and dependable electricity in communities and so on. So it's going to be a struggle, but it needs to happen.
Without a giant battery hanging on the side of your house?
Oh yeah, absolutely, and whatnot. So I was going to jump here. I just wanted to go over this because, Elon Musk I think he's beginning to wind down his time in the White House, if you will, on Doge and so on, but he's letting his guys take over. So I ran across this story, and no, they've talked about Social Security. Oh, they're not going to take Social Security away from you. Eligible people, they're not, okay? They just want to get rid of the fraud. So this was put out by Doge, okay, just last week I think it was. 25.4 million people over 115 years old claimed $59 million in benefits.
Good grief.
All right. 28,000 people between the ages of 1 and 5 claimed $254 million in benefits. All right. 9.7 thousand people with a birth date over 15 years in the future claimed $69 million.
That was the thing that I just saw. I was going to bring up that people who haven't yet been born are collecting Social Security benefits.
$69 million worth, okay? They're not even born. They're not supposed to be born for 15 years in the future. So you're talking 2040. You're talking 2040, you've already collected $69 million in Social Security benefits.
And the question is more than how much money have we lost. My question is, who's signing those checks?
Well, I think that's going to be coming, because as they unearth these cases of fraud, I think you're going to see investigations take place, and as time goes on, we're going to hear more and more. They've got to gather the evidence and make sure they got a solid case. So these things, people say, well, they should arrest people. Yeah, I agree. But if you go to court and you're not prepared for it correctly, you're going to lose. And then it's going to look doubly bad. So you need to be ready.
And these people, we've heard from President Trump that now they're also beginning to look into elected officials. And I think he mentioned Nancy Pelosi, who dumped a huge amount of stock the day before they were sued by the Securities and Exchange Commission. And he began to point to some of these things that have happened by elected officials, and now the Doge team. And I think you're right. I think Elon has lost enough money. He said, this is the first job I've ever had to cost me money, and caused people really dislike him. Mm-hmm. And that's because there's this steady drumbeat about how they shouldn't be looking into waste, fraud, and abuse. I don't know how that works, but I think he has now got a team in place that he feels confident that there's going to be another leader or leaders in these teams that are going to be able to unearth this stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think it's going to be both parties.
Oh yeah.
And it doesn't bother me that it's both parties, but I think that this may be the biggest revolution since since 1776. Really.
Well, I'll tell you though, the issue is, unearthing all this is great. But if Congress doesn't put this into law at some point, what's going to happen the next time a Democrat gets in, all of these things that are taking place are going to come right back again, right back. You've got to put a law in place that says this cannot be done, this cannot be changed. That's the only way you're going to control it going forward.
And to get people in there who will be for some length of time to make sure it doesn't change, because we saw this 5 years ago when Donald Trump was taken out of the presidency, and the mantra was, America is back. And what that meant was everything that was happening before Trump is now going to be happening again. And we've seen it, mm-hmm. where they were giving money away, and the abuses under U.S. aid are just legion. And I just heard Secretary of State Marco Rubio talking about this just the other day, about things that they arguably did or did not give, mm-hmm. For vasectomies in Zimbabwe and just things. We've heard the president say that those things were supposed to happen, but they never did. And where did the money go? That is the question. And I think that as they begin to unravel this, it may take much more than 4 years to get this set back right.
It will, definitely. And that's why, like I said, if there was a change in parties in 4 years, then all of this work will be done away with unless it's put into law. It's got to be put into law. And it's like he said, he ran on eliminating Social Security taxes, all right? What I just heard coming up here today on the news was in the package that the Republicans are putting forward now, all it does, it says, this will be a temporary thing. We'll give you a credit for $4,000, okay? No taxes on the first $4,000, but it's only temporary, which that means that, okay, baby, we're going to put it out there for maybe 1 year, then after that it's done away with.
Yes, and this is part of the big, beautiful bill that...
Yeah, right, that the Republicans are pushing forward in the House, right?
Yeah, and this, I think, is going to, where we're going to separate the wheat from the chaff. Who are the rhinos? Who are the American First Republicans? And, it's going to be something that if you're a conservative and you're listening to this program, it's something that you in your individual state or locality is going to have to vet and try to do something about. Mm-hmm. Here in Highlands County at this current time, we are blessed pretty much with a state House Representative Kaylee Tuck and a state Senator Aaron Grawl, who are pretty good staunch conservatives. Scott Franklin, who is the Republican representative here, we haven't gotten him to talk to us. We don't hear too much from what he's doing. We have asked on several occasions, you are going to support the president, and have not received a response. But it's going to be up to us to make sure that our kids and our grandkids and maybe our great-grandkids are going to be living in the kind of country that our founders set up for us.
Right, absolutely. So you would think, and the Republicans do this every time they end up being in charge. In other words, they have the majority. And this time, both the House, the Senate, and the presidency, which hasn't happened for a long, long time. And yet they diddle and dawdle like a bunch of I don't know what. And instead of getting things done, which should be, to me, it should be a straightforward thing. This is what we want to do. This is what the president put forward. This is what we agree with. Get her done. Put it into law. But no, they diddle and dawdle and say, oh, I don't like this and I don't like that. You got to take this out. You got to put that in. And so right now there's about a handful of Republicans that are holding it up. But it's enough that won't allow them to vote and get a positive vote and push it forward.
There are some people who run for, and John, we both know this, who run with an R after their name, who may not actually be R's, Republicans, but the Republican Party itself can't do much about it. It's happened here in Highlands County. There was a guy several decades ago that got elected. The minute he was elected, there was a horrible article run about him in the local paper about his checkered past, and they went to the head of the Republican Party at the time, my friend, the late Steve Roberts, and said, what kind of people are you running for office? He said, well, we don't run anybody. We don't run anybody. I mean, because they have an R after the name, we can't stop them. Mm-hmm. Teddy Kennedy could come in and put an R after his name and run. There wouldn't be anything we can do about it. So there are people who run as Republicans who may or may not reflect what the Republican Party is supposed to stand for.
Yeah, and it's and it's unfortunate, but this is what they're faced with, and they still haven't got the House bill passed yet. I mean, they still haven't got it. Johnson said yesterday that he expects to get it passed by today or tomorrow. I think the deadline for this is like the 26th or the end of the month, the end of May. So and it's got to go to the Senate after this, and the Senate, is not going to kick it around like a dirty football. So there's no telling what's going to happen over there. But this will lead then to a potential shutdown, which for me is not that bad, but I think they've got to make it such that the blame for the shutdown ends up being in the Democrats, not on the Republicans.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, well, they'll always make it about the Republicans. And if under the Democrats shutdown, it was a good thing. As Nancy Pelosi said, it's a good time for you to go find your passion.
Right.
It was a good time for you to be out because we know that even though it was shut down, no government worker lost a dime.
No.
Okay.
And things like military pay and Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, those are protected.
Those going on.
And if there's a shutdown, those are not impacted at all. Okay. So it's all the other things. If you remember the last one, which the Democrats, I think it was under Obama, and whatnot, that
Yes.
that they shut down the parks and they shut down this and shut down that. When people went to go, they couldn't go because it was shut down and so on and so forth. So,
They tried to make it as painful as possible, so people would try to jump over the barriers, and they'd get arrested because the park was closed. But again, I think that this is a time for Doge to really ramp up their investigations, because I think that it would be interesting to see how much more cooperative some of these guys were if they knew they were under investigation and they had to do quote unquote popular things. I have said for years that during an election year, it's amazing how more cooperative elected officials are, especially if there's somebody running against them. Oh yes, well, we'll be glad to work on this kind of thing. Whereas when they're in office and they don't have to 2 or 3 years to worry about it, they're not nearly as cooperative.
No, not at all. And, we see it here even on the local level.
Yes.
Okay, definitely on the local level.
Yes, very much so.
So I think it's because, when they go to candidate school and everybody's taught the same thing. This is what you do. Ignore the voters until about 6 months before election, then you love them. You kiss the babies and hug the women and, shake hands with the guys and all that good stuff.
And we've talked about this the other night, is that when people come back with a big check to give to the local charity, they have the perception that's quote unquote government. That's your money. Mm-hmm. You're giving this money to them.
Yep.
And that's what's coming out of your tax bill, whether it's the sales tax that you're paying at the dry goods store, the income tax you're paying, or whatever tax you're paying. That's your money.
Yep.
And I think the government has done a great job of making the perception of government money being some magical thing that appears out of nowhere.
Well, the government doesn't make anything, okay, but they take a lot of stuff, which is your money. Okay, you look at it, it's your money, whether it's local tax, federal tax, state tax, it's your money that's being given to this other organization, and you don't have a say in what they do with it. That's the other issue.
And it's a call for us and anybody, and this program now being on the internet as it is, it can be heard, anywhere, whatever jurisdiction you're in. It's time for you to start calling your representative. And we've talked about this. Generally, when you call a federal representative, you get one of two things. You get a tape recording, okay, or you get a low-level staffer whose only job it is to take your concerns and pass it along to the elected official. You will not call and get your congressman.
No.
You will not call and get your senator. And at the best, you'll get a low-level staffer. And I remember one time, I think it was you and myself and Bill Youngman, Lester was there, and about 5 of us showed up at one of Senator Rubio's open meetings, and they were visually unnerved that we weren't really, we didn't wear like leather jackets and carry switchblades. I mean, we were just sitting there, but they were unnerved that we'd showed up and started asking hard questions. And so it is easy for you to put your notes on a piece of paper in front of you here and have it written down and give your concerns off to the elected official. And we will sometimes not only call the Washington office, but we'll call the office in Orlando, and we'll call the office in Sebring, and we'll call several different offices, making sure that this gets heard.
Right.
And if the people don't call and do, they're going to do what they want. And it's going to be up to us. And this program is going to be designed to help you know what exactly is happening in Washington and what's happening in Tallahassee, so that you can call up and speak with some degree of authority.
And I think at some point, too, we'll be able to talk about some of the local issues that are of concern.
Yeah, in fact, the Barry Foster Show at gmail.com, I got an email just the other day asking me whether Rural King was coming to Sebring. And the answer is yes, Rural King is coming to Sebring. They are going to be moving into what used to be the Sears store at the Lakeshore Mall.
Ah, great news.
The negotiations are underway. I called the mall management, and Jenny told me, she says, well, Barry, we really don't own that building, okay? The Sears owns that building. She says, we don't really have much to say about it except where it opens up into our mall. But She said as far as she knows that they were in negotiation, but they had no timeline
Yeah.
for when that was going to happen.
I like Rural King because you go in there, they have chicks and ducks and bunnies
And popcorn.
and cages.
Yes.
And you can buy anything in there. I don't care whether it's food, it's ammo, it's a gun. Rural King has it. Okay.
You know, the thing, there's one, if you're listening to this program, we're in Avon Park, Florida, and that's right in the dead center of Central Florida. And one of the next towns up is Lake Wales, which is where the current closest Rural King is to us.
Yep.
And one thing we haven't done that I intend to do is maybe do a Made in USA survey to begin to look for the products that are made in the United States. We do that on a regular basis because if we see China, we don't pick it up. But one of the places that actually had, at least in one time, the most percentage-wise was the $1.25 store. Had more American-made stuff in there.
Right.
And so we always look for the American-made level, and we've got to call in to madeinusa.com to see if we can get them to do an interview with us about their funnel. But there's Made in America. There's some other organizations that have American-made products, and it's our job to help create jobs. And does it cost a little bit more? Yeah, well, probably it will.
Yeah.
You know, because when in some foreign country you can hire somebody for $15 a day, here it's $15 an hour.
Right.
You know, so that's why when you call customer service, you get somebody in the Philippines. But all that being said, it's going to be up to us to help the president make America great again by doing our part by trying to buy local products.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, I wish what they would do is on the internet put out a list of, if you're looking for hammers, what American companies make hammers, and just go down the list, and so that people know, okay, if I look for this brand, this model, it'll be made in America.
Well, and actually, you can kind of do that, depending on the search engine that you use. I use one called DuckDuckGo, and I have in the past put in American-made pen companies. But yeah, if you were looking for a ball peen hammer, you probably could put in Made in USA hammers, and you could find that.
Right.
And another place that does even a faster job, and it's another horrible, wonderful thing, is AI. On Bing, you have this thing called Copilot, which is their version of artificial intelligence. And you can go to the Copilot and say, look, I am looking for hammers made in the United States. Where do I find? And it'll give you the dots, and it combs the web spectacularly quickly. It's not really intelligence. It's artificial research. And it'll do the research, and it'll say, well, here are 4 companies that you can look at. You know, and then it gives you a place where you can then begin to ferret out the kind of what exactly you're looking for.
Right. And if you take a look at it, I saw this the other day. It talked about, you know, who is the largest importer of things from China? Amazon.
Oh, really?
Amazon, yeah, by far.
Huh.
By far. Because if you, I mean, I buy a lot of craft type stuff from Amazon because I can't find it locally, all right, and so on. And it is almost exclusively made in China, almost exclusively, and so on. So, yeah.
We're getting near the end of this segment, but John, I see you've brought some stuff from Dr. Mercola.
Yeah, well, I'll hold off. It's a little bit longer. I'll hold off.
Okay.
And it has to do with type 2 diabetes and so on, because I
Okay.
still follow him because I think his information is good and trustworthy.
Because one thing I want, and as we go along now from 2020 and 2021, there's a lot of things happening with people who took the jab. And I think it's going to be, Dr. McCullough helps track that. We need to look into that and find out some of the longer term effects are now becoming apparent. And we're going to talk about that next time.
Yeah, yep.
John, I appreciate you being with us.
Very
And-
good. Yeah,
and
glad
we'll-
to be back in at it.
It's good to have you in the studios. I'll get your microphone tightened up for you next time. I promise.
Right. I had it up there, but it kind of
Yeah,
it drifts away.
I got an Allen wrench. We can fix that. As we do this more and more, we're going to find out more
There
and
you
more
go.
about it.
There
We're
you go.
moving forward in the app and in progress and new equipment. And we appreciate all. Yes, I know. You've been listening to the latest edition of the Barry Foster Show, recorded on Wednesday, May the 21st at the Ridge Floor Studios, located in the City of Charm, downtown Avon Park. If you have thoughts, ideas, or suggestions for our program, just drop us a line at thebarryfostershow@gmail.com. Check out our YouTube page at The Barry Foster Show daily, as we'll be putting up new programming on a regular basis. And please subscribe to our YouTube page and join our pages at The Barry Foster Show on Facebook and Instagram. This is Barry Foster, and we'll see you next time.